Hi, everybody, and welcome back to the podcast. Today, I've got someone who just came in recently. His name is Ryan. He's a former Unfaithful. And I will tell you, Ryan, your first podcast with me was just lights out. So many people resonated with what you were talking about and just resonated with your heart to come in and be honest. So, thank you for coming back in.
Yeah, thank you. My pleasure. And certainly thanks a lot for the opportunity to have had chatted last time and happy to be back.
Well, it's an honor, and let the viewer and the listener understand today. Your friend Sam's got a cold he's getting over, so my voice is a little bit raspy, but the show must go on. So I appreciate all the thoughts and concerns from many clients, but I'm doing great. Today, Ryan, we're picking back up after your first interview where you talked about you found it so hard to let go of the lies. And for those of you that are watching and listening, if you haven't watched or listened to Ryan's first podcast, I would highly encourage you to go and listen to that one. You've had to take multiple polygraphs. You took a polygraph, which was a game changer. You still take one periodically. We'll talk a little bit about that now that I've got some of the listeners' attention that you are healing, but you still periodically will take them. So here's a question that so many betrayed want to know. Why were you lying so much, Ryan? Why was it that, and I've been where you were, so I understand it, but talk a little bit about, man, what was the root cause of just one lie after the fact that you get so buried, you don't even know which way is up, right?
Yeah, I think that's really well said. The thing I oftentimes think about when I look back or I look myself in the mirror is it's almost like a snowball that started rolling downhill. I tend to kind of like tune out when people talk about, oh, everything goes back to childhood and stuff. But in my case, I do think it goes back to certain things, certain behaviors that role modeled. White lies were an everyday part of some of the role models that I was exposed to. Then as you shift into kind of like my adulthood, you go from these white lies to being a guy who kind of became or was always kind of just good on his feet or kind of quick with a story. And I learned that I could kind of get away with it. So when you talk about like why'd you lie so much? I think first of all, it comes down to absolute selfishness, right? And then when you start to do some of the things that I was doing, affairs, multiple affairs, the ability to lie and to kind of stretch those truths and kind of get away with those things, that absolutely just simply helped perpetuate my behavior, my consistent lies that were out there. Whether it was like, hey, I'm going to this place, or hey, I was hanging out with this person, but that eventually allowed me to just perpetuate that. It became second nature. And I put it kind of akin to it takes a long time to build biceps, right? Or to build calves in the gym. And when you start lying and you do it more and more and more, it becomes second nature. That becomes your go-to. Now, the good news is with a lot of discipline, you can actually break yourself out of that habit where lying and dishonesty don't feel good. So that's kind of how I found myself. I think that's kind of the root cause.
And I think you hit it right on the head. So many people, I'll get messages all the time. Oh, we're just whining about childhood and we're just whining about, what we were exposed to. And that's just a cop out. But for you, it sounds like that was part of the healing that you had to really practice was finding out why you told little white lies upon little white lies as a kid. Does it not? Is that not something that you had to at least look at?
Yeah, that's absolutely part of that, like doing the work. I heard you say something in a recent podcast. You said when somebody asked it, like, hey, what does doing the work look like? And well, I think you were gentle with it, but kind of the thing you're not doing, right? So I think it kind of comes back to the idea that you've really got to want to make that kind of positive change. You've got to not want to be that person again. And you can develop that muscle, but you have to kind of get sick of it. Right? That sick of you got to want to leave that kind of habitual behavior behind because I got to tell you, being honest, living in the sunshine, telling the truth, that feels good. And that plays a role in kind of digging yourself out of a pit that many of us unfaithful find ourselves in.
Well, what's compelling is that you're doing it. So maybe for the betrayed that are listening, as well as the unfaithful, you've actually been able to come out from the perpetual lying and deception, selfishness. We can go on for hours. So do you struggle at all with that, even over little things?
Yeah, today it is distasteful if I think about the person that I am evolving into. I hesitate to say this guy that I am now, right? Because it's a healing journey, right? But it's distasteful. It doesn't feel good. I was actually just talking with my wife earlier today, and I was telling her how I catch myself from time to time, whether it's something like, when did I talk to this person about this, right? Now, if I say something that is even slightly deviated from what the core truth is, I'll catch myself. I'll fix it almost instantaneously. Go, hey, you know what? That's not exactly right. And I do that because that feels good. I think it was Mark Twain who said something to the effect of something like, tell the truth because it's the easiest thing to remember. Something like, I'm kind of butchering it, but I think that when you really figure out who you want to be, you're willing to do the work. Lying no longer and dishonesty is no longer consistent with that evolution and turning into the person that you really like in the mirror. And so I think that's kind of a motivating factor for me.
And that brings me to another question. So, every unfaithful that has to do their work wrestles with shame. They process through the feeling of absolute just embarrassment, humiliation, even self hatred. And so, for you, I mean, you came down to the wire where you finally had to take a polygraph and you finally had to come clean with everything. How did you pick yourself up? I mean, some people, man, they jump into, hours and hours upon work and therapy. Some people do intensives. But as a man, and knowing you personally, I mean, you are a true man's man, strong, confident, someone that if I'm going to go into a bar fight, I'm calling you. There's not this, softness about you that you are just in a position where this just came easy for you. Like it was hard for you. But how did you pick yourself up? I mean, the first interview you talked about having to come clean, sleeping on the couch. How did you regain a sense of confidence and self-worth to move towards your wife and kids and actually start to confront yourself?
Yeah, so when I think about that, I think the first thing I want to acknowledge, and I've heard you acknowledge this before, is that both the unfaithful and the betrayed wrestle with shame. They're very different kinds of shame. And I want to acknowledge that the shame that I've read about, even that I've watched through working with others, whether it's mentoring or giving back with groups, that all of us kind of go through this. So when I think about my own kind of shame journey, I actually think about it kind of in like three phases. First, if you look at the absolute disaster, the human wrecking ball that I was leading up to the polygraph, multiple D days, just absolutely torturing my wife with just not getting her the truth as she dug and dug. I mean, she was literally an FBI agent, a forensic accountant. She was already suspicious, but like in the panic and chaos that followed D-Day, shame wasn't a part of anything. It was just self-preservation. Oh my God, fear, anxiety every single day. And that lasted for almost 9 months. Then you hit phase two, and I took that polygraph, and that was really like my come to Jesus moment. I've heard you talk about it before, like kind of your cornfield moment where you're just like, hey, God, help me kind of thing. And so that was really humbling. And when I say humbling, taking that polygraph, that's not to engender sympathy from anybody because Lord knows betrays go through things that are exponentially worse. But as I was able to let go of holding on to the truth, that weight kind of came off my shoulders. Now, sadly, anybody who's ever been through a disclosure knows that when the betrayed, they end up taking on a lot of that weight that comes off the unfaithful. So it just transferred to her. And for that, I'll ever be sorry. But kind of getting into the last part of what I call like phase three, when we talk about shifting that shame, as reality starts to set in, I realized we talked about this last time, I had everything to lose. Like it was all going to be gone. I spent the better part of a year moving from a sense of shame to a sense of like, I want to fix this. I want to own this. I want to do whatever it takes to unscrew my life and hopefully somehow save everything. So that makes me think of things like facing the darkness, right? Like, and you and I have talked about that before, but we already said that the work is the stuff you're not doing. But I think for me, it just came down to like, if I didn't change, I was going to lose everything. And it was two primary questions. What was life going to look like if I didn't do the work, right? I'd lose my wife, my relationship with our daughters, let's say income, family, who others thought of me, versus what would it look like if I did the work? And I'll finish by telling you, I focused on what it would look like if I did the work. I might regain some of that respect and love and admiration. I might like the guy in the middle or in the mirror rather. And I might have the slightest chance with my wife to build something new. So that's kind of how I think of that shame evolution and kind of facing all of that music, so to speak.
So, do you think it was accurate that, and I know that it is, but I want to tee it up for you. Do you think it was accurate that you really went into it going, maybe we could save the relationship? It sounds like you were unsure if your wife was going to forgive you, but you still were like, I'm going to at least roll the dice. I'm going to at least give it a try and see.
Yeah, yeah. There was definitely like, excuse me, but what the hell do I have to lose? This is the woman that I loved, that I always wanted a life with, despite all the terrorizing things that I was doing to her heart and to her soul. And I figured that why not take a chance? It's one of the more not famous quotes that she and I have, but I can remember her saying, like, it's so like you from an audacity perspective to think that you have a vote in this, right? And I maybe I kind of looked at it like, you know what? This is the hardest thing I've ever had to do. And I've done some tough things. Lots of people have done some tough things, but I figured I got a chance and there's only going to be goodness that's going to come out of trying because fix myself and be a better human being, ideally for somebody to love, but in a perfect world, in this miracle of miracles, she'll love me again and I can win a spot back in her heart. And I knew that was going to just take a tremendous of effort. So why not, right? It was everything I wanted, one in a million, and sometimes hard work makes its own luck.
Well, and I think it's just such a courageous mentality that says, well, this is who I want. This is what I want. I'm going to try. Now, I want to shift gears a little bit because I feel like this could be very helpful for the unfaithful that are listening. And it's certainly going to be helpful for the betrayed. But what do you think were some of the biggest mistakes that you made that delayed your progress? Obviously, not giving up the details, but on top of that, as you've learned and walked through this, what were some of the big mistakes that you remember making?
Yeah. First, if I can go back to something you said, maybe 30 seconds, the guts or the courage or the bravery it takes to kind of make that change, that pales in comparison, I think, to the courage and the guts for a betrayed partner to keep that window open and to sit back being so hurt and so beat down by the ultimate, betrayal that infidelity brings, but special courage on behalf of the betrayeds. But when I think about those big mistakes, I think it all comes down to like looking yourself in the mirror and really doing the work to reflect on like how you got to that spot. And I think for me, a big part of that had to do with self-esteem. So these are like the ways I thought about things from a mistake perspective. But like I'm a former military guy, and when you're doing that kind of work, there's a sense of title, bravado, rank, that kind of stuff. And when I made the jump out of the military, I found myself where I didn't have that. And I realized that I was trying to fill that empty part of my bucket, as therapists often say, with that applause or adoration, right? And I found a few women that helped do that. So to me, deep down, I just was unwilling to share that real vulnerability with my wife and tell her the things that I was struggling with, whether it was conscious or self-conscious. And then to your point, boy, once you get into the affair, I mean, you talk about mistakes, obviously not coming clean, but I truly thought there was no doubt in my mind that if she ever found out, it was all going to be over. No chance there was going to be any chance to save anything. So I thought she'd never find out. I'm good at lying. I'm going to protect this thing and I'm just going to keep it going. I'm going to take this damn thing to my grave. Though I had no idea how to get out of it. And at times I wanted to, at times I didn't want to, that kind of stuff. So definitely a host of mistakes. I mean, we could go on and on about that.
And so I was talking to a client the other day, and they actually listened to your story, and they were like, so he still took polygraphs, even though they were doing great. I said, absolutely. So your wife was very key, as just a quick review, to say, I still want periodic polygraphs to be able to help me feel safe. So how often do you take them now?
Yeah, so kind of the person you were talking about, to have had invested some time listening to that. To answer your question, probably the last one was at the 1 year mark. I assume the next one will be at the 1 year mark. But this is really key, though. The whole reason why, the polygraphs were employed was to provide my wife a bit of mindfulness in terms of being able to rest her mind and to tone down the vigilance thing. And we have some things which you and I can talk about either today or a subsequent podcast about how we learn to put certain safety protocols in place. But the polygraphs allowed my wife to no longer have to check my phone or to worry every single day, every single hour, where is he, what's he doing, who's he talking to, right? It gave her that freedom. And one of the things that I just became comfortable with and still am very comfortable today is the idea that she could literally, I could, come home tonight from seeing a friend and she could say, hey, I need you to go see the polygrapher tomorrow. I just have this uneasy feeling or whatever. And I go, hey, right on. You want to come with me? Let's go. No problem. Right. So I don't view it as something to fear because I know I'm living myself and carrying on, my activities and out in the sunshine. I'm doing the right things, and it's not a problem like, many people might think it should be if you're just doing the right thing.
Well, and I think that's the heart that every betrayed would love to see in their husband or wife, a heart that says, man, you tell me what you need, and I'm all in because I'm committed to this and I've got nothing to hide. So, when you think about the topic of trust, and okay, so you're taking periodic polygraphs, you're doing work, you're doing groups, you're working with people. Do you feel now that your wife trusts you, or how do you think she looks at you? You travel for work, you obviously see clients. You're not 13. I mean, you've got your own life that you are living in, and there's responsibilities and expectations. So, what does life look like now when it comes to trust between you and your wife and your family?
Yeah. So if I don't begin by saying I am the luckiest guy in the entire world to have been and still be married to somebody who gave me a chance that I underline this, put it in 24 bold font, didn't deserve. Today, I would say I have regained a place in her heart and I have regained her trust. Now, do I honestly think I will ever be fully 100% trusted, like no 1%, no basis point missing? I don't know. Probably not. And that's not a bad thing, right? Because of the things I did, right? So no problem. But I know that we've established enough trust through, and this is really what's key. And I know that there'll be some betrayed out there who are going to shake their head vigorously. And for the unfaithful, God, please listen to this. My wife judged my actions and her ability to trust me based on actions over time. And you've helped coach me on that personally. These are measurable, consistent, what I call, quote, her first wholesome, safety oriented actions. And just like building muscle, the more you do that over time, the easier it begins to feel comfortable for her to be like, oh, he's going up to the grocery store. I know he's going to be back in 10 minutes. No problem. I know she doesn't bat an eye. But even to this day, if I'm going to go have a drink with one of my buddies a mile away, I send her a screen print of the text exchange saying who, what, when, where, and what time. No big deal, right? I mean, that's the price I have to pay, polygraph or a simple screen just to be with this person. Easiest thing in the world, considering my past and the things I put her through. It's the easiest thing. Again, luckiest guy on the damn planet.
I love that. I want to ask you something. So, did you have to be trained to do that? Did someone have to kind of kick your ass and say, look, Ryan, this is what you have to do? Or did you arrive at that point on your own that says, whatever you need, honey, I will screenshot, FaceTime, send a picture? How did you get to such a point of accountability and kind of just a rock solid willingness to help her feel safe?
Yeah, so I think it's kind of all of the above. We used to say in the military that the junior captain, right, the mid-level, early stage off, is the product of two things. One, the individual's ability and willingness to invest in themselves. And number two, the outside environment's willingness to invest in them. So let's talk about that latter one first. I had people and programs and access to resources that I actively sought out. I've talked about before. We worked with the team at A Fair Recovery for a program for myself and for our marriage. I had life coaches like you who've guided me. I had therapists. I was willing to do the work. Now I'm flipping to the other side. I was willing to do the work over time to prove to her that we could build something that would put me in a different position, that would put me in a spot where she could kind of sit back, with the proverbial fingers on the chin and go, I'm seeing some change. Slow. I'm going to give him a little bit more chance. Like, Sam, I remember a conversation with you where I thought, man, I don't know if this is ever going to happen. I'm never going to get back. And you're like, just keep doing the right thing. And I've heard you say before, make the next right decision. And that's one of my favorite quotes in recovery. If for the unfaithful out there, just stop once in a while, take a deep breath and say, hey, what's the next right decision that I can make? And I think that went a long way to showing her that I was invested in me, that I was invested in her, and that I was really going to work hard to be somebody that just might miraculously have a shot with her. So,
And I really love that. I want to highlight the fact that, man, it doesn't sound easy, but it just sounds so well thought out. You don't do this for a living. You're just a survivor telling his story. But I remember there was days where you were just exacerbated by your own frustration and pain and the struggle. It's not easy. But the fact is, it's accomplishable when you have both parties who are willing to do the work. And sometimes it's actually possible when the betrayed is unsure, but they're willing to give it a shot, and the unfaithful goes all in and just absolutely says, my job is to recover, to heal, to do everything in my power. From what you've seen, and from the things that you have seen in the groups that you're in, or the groups that you've even run, from the people that you have been in recovery with, would you agree that even if a betrayed is not really sure, but the unfaithful is all in, whatever it takes, everything in my power, I'm going to do the next right thing, that the chances of success are greater than the chances at the relationship ending?
Yeah, 1000%. I mean, like what's the old adage? Like you can only control the things you can control, right? And I think of 12 step and the things that are repeated there. First, again, I have to take a bended knee and just call out the betrayed. Yeah, the work that the unfaithful does, it's hard. No kidding, right? Equal, if not way harder, probably way harder, is the recovery for the betrayed for I think some fairly obvious reasons. So certainly nodding to their struggles. But I think at the end of the day, I think there's an idea that you have to want to change, but at the end of the day, your relationship may survive. You're a component of that 50% or whatever you want to quantify it at, but you have to change for you to be a healthy you, to be somebody who you can respect again and really like. We talked about that last time, right? Like you're going to like the way you look. You're damn right. Like you do the work. And in a perfect world, a perfect set of scenarios, that work is being replicated by the betrayed. And if you put the right work in, you just might create the right environment. Like we've often said, like, I couldn't heal my wife, but I, through my own work, through my empathy, through the way I engage with her, could create an environment in which she could heal. And in that perfect scenario where I was healing, she was healing, I think that that created an exponentially more successful opportunity for she and I to heal together and to come back together over time.
I just love that so, so much. Creating an environment that allowed for healing and allowed for your partner, in this case, your wife, to slowly but surely let her guard down and feel safe. And man, I hope all of you that are listening, especially the unfaithful, ask yourself this question: what am I doing to create an environment of safety? Now, I know that a lot of unfaithfuls will be like, well, Sam, Ryan, my wife or my husband, the betrayed, is angry and raging and all of this. Absolutely. It's part of it. It's absolutely part of it. But sometimes, like Ryan said, the best thing that you can do is the next right thing. And that might mean go to a meeting. That might mean go to a therapy appointment, read a book, go to work out something. Create an environment that your betrayed partner would be willing to slowly let their guard down. So it's a beautiful statement, Ryan. I just absolutely love just the desire to come in here and just share what worked for you and what didn't work. And so for those of you that are watching and listening, if I can help in any way, by all means, feel free to reach out to me. You can do so at samshealingpodcast@gmail.com, or you can leave a comment here. I'd love for you to subscribe as well. I try and bring in real life guests, real people that, for the sake of their career, need to protect their identity or because of their children. But you're hearing from people that have been through it, that get it. And so, Ryan, dude, you get it. I know that many people are going to get you. So thank you again for coming in and sharing more about your story.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me. And to those who are fighting for their recovery, just keep going. Try to have a soft heart and just keep hope alive. Good things are around the corner.
And truer words have not been said. I had a hashtag I used a couple of years ago on Twitter all the time called keep going. So for all of you that are really trying and it's hard as hell, we get it. We absolutely get it. But keep going. You're worth it. Your partner's for sure worth it. But your own self-respect is worth it. So thanks for tuning in. We'll see you next time on Sam's Healing Podcast.